Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, where our job is to help you build visibility, professional credibility, and connection with your ideal client by putting the human at the center of innovative marketing, so you can build and strengthen an engaging, enduring relationship with your ideal clients. I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm honored that you're here with me. If you haven't joined our wonderful marketing transformation community yet, go to innovabiz.co and collect your free gift as well. Do subscribe to the show and also leave a review because it helps others find us. Let's get into today's masterclass on this InnovaBuzz podcast.
If you're starting a project or you innovate, especially with innovation, if you're looking to think of innovating a product that's already out there to make it better, if you're thinking about it to sell it and make a mass amount of money and sell a company, when times get tough, and it will get tough, you won't stick in it. But if you're passionate about making a difference with that product, you'll stick through it through thick and thin.
Welcome back. I hope you've had an awesome week so far. If you haven't yet listened to my recent conversations with Tendai Vicky of Strategizer and with Brooke Salas of B Squared Media, then do go check them out, but only after you've listened to today's conversation. I'm really excited today to have on the InnovaBuzz podcast as my guest, Danny May. Danny is a global AI tech entrepreneur and an industry speaker who founded Lingmo, a digital AI-powered translation software provider with no IT background or AI background. His idea to develop a real-time language translation solution to break down the global language barrier came about after an embarrassing situation in China when his passport was stolen and he had no way of communicating with the local authorities. With no formal training in the technology space, Danny has now developed a deep understanding of AI and speech recognition technology in the translation sector and the benefits it brings not only to products, but also to the people using the technology. This has led him to develop relationships with many corporate multinationals and take the lead in mentoring them on how they can improve their business communication, as well as guide them into incorporating AI into their internal systems. With an impressive portfolio, presenting keynotes, sitting on panels, and giving talks around the world, Danny's easygoing and approachable manner gives him the natural ability to share his expertise. His intuitive mindset seeks to make the impossible possible and inspires many young people to follow their dreams. His engaging presentations make it easy for people to relate to him as he demonstrates how to push the boundaries in the startup world. Today, in our discussion, Danny talked to me about how he overcame the challenges he faced when changing industries. He described his passion for improving business communications across language and geography barriers, and he explained why you should be comfortable being uncomfortable. Without further ado, then let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Danny May. Hi, I'm your host Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today, all the way from Sydney, Australia, which is probably the closest podcast guest I've had for a few episodes, Danny May, who's the co-founder and CEO of Lingmo International. That's a world-leading provider of cloud-based artificial intelligent translation software and voice recognition technology. Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, Danny. It's a real privilege to have you as my guest.
Thanks for having me.
Neil Sahota, who was our guest on episode 344 of the InnovaBuzz podcast, suggested that we have a conversation with you, Danny. So big hello to Neil.
How you going?
I know he listens in from time to time.
Yep.
Now, Danny, you've got a fascinating story, and we'll link to maybe one or two other podcasts, because I know if we capture it in kind of one or two sentences, it's from a plumber that told a policeman in China that you love him to a tech entrepreneur, right? And what I'd like to kind of explore a little bit, what were some of the big challenges in that journey when you discovered a need and decided I'm going to address that need? What were some of the big challenges you faced along the way?
A lot of challenges, and still go through the challenges as we speak. But I guess the biggest one was going from plumbing to tech. Really shifting my mindset to learn about the tech industry, self-teach myself everything I need to know. That was one of the biggest lessons and sort of stepping stones that I had to get over. And then the other one was, chasing investors and trying to go through the investment route. Being a plumber to tech, a lot of angel investors didn't really believe that I could do what I had to do. So, in the early days, we sold the family house, convinced the wife, and put the money in, created the MVP to show exactly what we can do, and then started looking for investment from there. So I guess the stepping stones were getting it to the MVP stage and going from and differentiating ourselves compared to to the big players in the market at the moment, or back then and currently now, is having a different mindset, and that's where the plumbing really I felt had an advantage on that.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that. But one of the things I was curious about was how long was it before you had the experience in China where you thought, wow, a translation app would be really cool, one that works properly, because I believe you tried one at the time and it failed you.
Yeah.
How long before you came to that realization and then said, I'm going to do this?
Well, it's a long trip from Shanghai back to Sydney, so it was a lot of thinking on that stage. But when I come back, I did probably about 6 months worth of market research to really work out how the translation was so wrong from the competitor that I used. And then, all in all, probably took about 12 months from when I sort of come back to doing research, putting the team together, and start implementing the application to go to market.
You did decide, though, on that flight back from China that you were going to do something.
I did. I'm the type of person that I have. I'm very energetic. So if I say I'm going to do something, I put it in my mind. I go off and do it straight away. I don't ponder about it. There was a long flight, and I just thought how many other people in the same situation around the world. I was fortunate enough. I could have been put in jail or worse shot because I told the police officer I loved him. But how many people have been put in that situation that just couldn't communicate, that didn't get out of it. So that's where I really started thinking. And then on that trip home, I was also thinking, how could this big company get it so wrong? And how am I going to think different to fix the problem? And again, it was a 12-hour flight, so a lot of time thinking, and come back and then started executing on the market research. And I had done this with other businesses that I started in the past, and then or looked at in the past, like problems. And when I got through to the market research, I found, well, the companies that were doing it were actually doing a pretty good job. There's nothing I could really add to make it better. But in this instance, it was the speech recognition that I could add value to.
Okay. And you mentioned that you kind of sold the house and you invested in building a minimum viable product. How did you first of all, were you still doing plumbing at that time to kind of keep paying the bills?
Yeah, 100%. That was one thing that I learned very early on was keep the money coming in so you can continue paying bills. And, I've got a family, I've got 3 sons and a wife. So still paying all the bills at the time, because if I stopped and really put everything into it, it would put more strain on the finances at home, which put more pressure on myself, and the product would have suffered. So for 2.5 years, I continued doing plumbing during the day, and then did this overnight.
Yeah, well, and what kept you going during that time in terms of, the pressure on you? So essentially working 2 jobs plus finding time for your young family?
It was kind of getting into a routine, I think. So, got up at 4:30 in the morning, went did plumbing, come back, spent a couple of hours with the kids, and then our development team, they were in Pakistan, so they worked overnight, so it worked out really well.
Yeah.
So I spent time with the boys until 11 o'clock at night, like the development team, and then sort of did that and pretty much only had Sundays off for a couple of years, and it was just getting through the process. And there was days where you get down and you go, well, geez, I don't want to keep doing this. I'm tired. Then the wife comes in and says, well, you put so much time and effort, continue doing it. And then I kept on doing that. And then sometimes the wife goes, you're putting so much time and effort, you're not getting anywhere. Going, we're getting there. So it was sort of the balance where
Bouncing off one another.
Bouncing off one another. If I felt down, she sort of come back in, and then if she was down, I come back in, and that's sort of how it got us through the time. So having a really supportive partner really got us through.
Yeah, that's really important, isn't it? Now, one of the things I'm curious about, kind of that transition from a plumber, a tradesperson that works hands-on and creates things or repairs things physically as physical work with, obviously a very high level of know-how, but taking that to something completely different, which is into the technology space, creating something there. How did that transition? How did you make that transition? How did you find that transition? And what were some of the lessons you took across from what you'd learned as a plumber?
So the transition when I moved from full-time plumbing to full-time doing the tech was hard. It still had the mindset of doing plumbing during the day and then this of at night. Was fortunate enough when we decided for me to come over full-time and do it, I had partners on with the business, and we decided for me to come on full-time. 2 weeks after that, we had a family trip planned to Thailand. So we did that, and that kind of reset me. It was the reset that I needed to come back and go, well, you're not a plumber anymore. You're a tech entrepreneur. So that's what you need to focus on and really start doing it during the day and get used to that. So that was the mindset and the change that I did, because before that, for the 2 weeks leading up to that, I was really struggling on, I feel like I should be going to work today to, clear some block toilets, not, focus on the tech side and the sales. So that transition was hard. But that's where I got through that. Some of the similarities from plumbing to tech is, especially what we're doing now, is with plumbing. I use when we go into a room, like a bathroom. So we come into, say, your house, and you said, I want to have. It was got blank walls, and you go, I want my toilet there, my shower there, my hand basin here. I have to visualize where the plumbing's going to go. So when the walls go on, I know when I've put the toilet in, I'm not going to drill through it. So with tech, so we sort of got to have a 3D. We've got to have what it looks like now, to what it looks like in the future, and plan accordingly, so we know the process in between. And with tech, it worked out the same. It's okay. This is what we've got here now, but how do we vision it to the next level, so the customers are using it, making it easy for everyone to use, and then executing on that. So that's what I sort of took across, was visualizing what the product should look like in the end, and how it should be used, and then working out in between how we get it done.
Yeah, I love that. You basically took the principles behind what you actually do and said, well, what's the principle and how do I apply that in a different space?
Exactly. And then again, sometimes that's hard, but it depends on the industry. But plumbing and say carpentry and builders and stuff, we've all got the same unique gift, where we've got to, a builder goes to a blank piece of dirt and goes, well, I've got to build a house here. You've got to visualize how that house is going to look, so you know where to put a piece of timber. And it's the same with plumbing and electrical. You've got to visualize where you do, because if you put the pipe in the wrong spot, you drill a hole through, you've got to pull the whole bathroom off, because you've got to fix the pipe you just drilled through. I've done that a few times as well. But yeah, it's taken the similarities to what we're doing now.
Okay, now you talked about building a minimum viable product to prove to investors that it was a worthy company to invest in. Let's take a step back, like building that minimum viable product. You talked about a team in Pakistan. How did you find people that had the technical capabilities to translate what was your vision, your end use that was in your mind? How did you find people that could see that as well and say, yep, I think we can build that?
I was quite fortunate in that space. I did, I was working before Lingmo, building websites and stuff for, family, friends and so on. And I was introduced to Pakistan to one of our head guys at Pakistan, 7-8 years ago, and he was doing the websites for us and stuff like that. So I got to know him quite well, and I was introduced to him. I wasn't something that I went on the internet. But when we started, Lingmo, I really went out to try and find developers, in Sydney, Singapore, San Francisco, China, and they all, when I did meet people, they all had the same sort of thinking inside the box, which wasn't really going to get it done for us. So then I went to my contacts in Pakistan and said, can you guys do software and build apps that, artificial intelligence? They go, yeah, of course we can. So then I said, well, this is the mindset, this is what we've got. They said, well, yeah, well, let's give it a go. And, what's the worst that can happen? It's not going to work. So so from there, and they've been with us ever since, coming up to 7 years. And it's because we think different. We challenge the status quo in what we do, and we really perfected the speech recognition. So the company's software that I used when I was in China, the translation was perfect, but what was wrong was the speech input. So if the speech input was incorrect, the translation's only going to be as good as the speech input. So that's where we really focus on the speech recognition side, because we detected that's where everyone was lacking. So we really perfected that. Then if you get the speech input correct, the rest of it flows on and it's accurate. So, having the team to think the same as what I did around that was really helpful. But also aside to that, because I was teaching myself this, or what I need to know in the artificial intelligence for speech recognition, they were teaching me. So I was asking questions that may have been stupid to a lot of other people, but they were treating me like an equal, and they were answering the questions I had so I could learn, because they knew if they were teaching me, like now I can get questions, I answer the questions, I don't need to go to them for it. I only go to the questions if I think we have to alter it slightly, or our software and so on. So they were teaching me up, and that's where I really found it worked really well.
Yeah, I love that you kind of, you lucked out in some ways, although you probably, without necessarily being really conscious of it, hired people that were a real good cultural fit. And then, as you say, they thought very much along the lines that you did. Let's think outside the box here and let's give it a go.
Well, that's the only way you can challenge the status quo, is if you're thinking outside the box. If you're inside the box, you can get it done to a certain degree, especially in development side. To stay ahead of the curve, you really got to think outside. You got that's what the three circles are. In the middle is your comfort. You got your unique spot in the middle. All the rest of it's your comfort zone. So if you get out of your comfort zone, then that's where the magic really starts happening, and that's what we found.
Great. All right. And you mentioned that you took a partner on board. So when did you make that decision? Was that something you kind of were advised to do by investors, or did you make that decision beforehand?
No, beforehand. I made it beforehand. A couple of businesses I started before, being young and kind of, we'll say, stupid in that aspect. That you created the business, and then you have people come on saying, yeah, it's a cool idea, we want to come on. We'll come on if you give us 30%, and you sit there and go, well, I'm not giving you 30% because I put my hard-earned money and et cetera into it, and that was a lesson that I learned. So with Lingmo, I brought Darren on. So Darren Aller, he's one of my partners, and I brought him on at the early stage before any investors come on board, because I got the product to the MVP stage and got it working and that. But I knew my limitations, and my limitation was commercializing it on a global scale. It's a language translation; it couldn't just be Australia focused, so it's got to be a global scale. So I brought Darren in to help me commercialize the product, because his skills complemented mine, so I could work on the technical side of it. He had the commercial side of it that could get it to global scale, to the right people, to the right angel investors, and so on. And it was the best thing that ever happened to us.
Well, that was my next question. Actually, was how did you get your first investors on board? How did you find them? How did you reach out to them. So it sounds like Darren was the
Darren brought it.
Yeah,
the key to that. He knew the right people to bring on and had the right network of people to invest and believe in us the way believe in the product the way that we did. So it was hard for me because I kind of grew up on the wrong side of the tracks and I didn't know the people that would have the money to be able to put into this. So come down to commercialising the product. I brought Darren on to help me commercialise the product. We needed to get investment to help commercialise it, and he knew the right people to bring on.
Great. All right. And how did you then kind of bring those people on in terms of, or what were the challenges to bring those people on? Because I'm guessing you made some presentations in various forums. So did they take straight away, or was it a bit of a hard slog?
With the angel side, it was a bit of both. I think when it comes to the angel investment, they believe more in the people than the product, and they trusted Darren and what he had done in the first round. So we've done 3 rounds of investment. Then they've seen how we're growing through the rounds of investment, and that's where we started getting more and more traction, and they start seeing the products. We're going through a round of funding now, and it's a lot more difficult now, not because of COVID or anything like that. It's just because we're in that bridge round. So we're in between like a seed round and like a Series A. It's just sort of that no man's land. So now we're doing a lot of presentations, a lot of demonstrations and so on. So I'm finding, they say now it's harder to, when you start going up, it's harder to get more money. But in the early days, it was people believing in us and what we could deliver.
All right. Okay. So let's take a step back then and tell us a little bit about the product itself, about Lingmo, what it does and where you're headed with it.
So Lingmo, what we do at Lingmo is we provide real-time language translation solutions for enterprise customers. So we've got partnerships with Zoom, Telefonica, Melia Hotels, where we provide our solution to better engage their end user. So whether it's communication from within Zoom via a chat, you're speaking to a work colleague in China, they can't, English is their second language. They can type in Chinese, you can type in English and converse. Telefonica, we've partnered with them to utilise 5G with Melia Hotel Group. So they're a big hotel chain. We've got a proof of concept starting with them now, and that's to be embedded into their hotel system. So concierge, check-in, check-out, room service, instant messaging. So you don't have to speak or type in the same language. It translates in between. So it makes the guest feel wanted and not having the fear of, I don't know how to order a drink or, get my room resupplied for room service and so on. So we really, our solutions are really to bridge the gap between what companies talking to their customers.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And you said real time. So is it kind of like as if we were speaking 2 different languages, but we're actually hearing our native language when you speak to me?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so that's exact. So we're working with Zoom on that now to have it on the Zoom meeting. So we're hoping to have that launched in, first half of next year. We're the only ones in the world doing that with Zoom at the moment. And with the ability of what we're doing with Telefonica and 5G, it's making it, instant. Being the 5G is really enhanced. It's reduced our latency by about 60%. So, we're working on ones where you pick up the phone and you call someone, and it's in real time. So our software and the artificial intelligence can work like that. What's let us down in the past is the network connecting the 2 together. So that's where our next steps are. But it's exciting because communication is the key. No matter what language you're in, whether it's business or you're ordering something online for shopping, if you can't communicate to someone to ask a question, you're not going to be able to continue using that site or that service.
Yeah, and it opens up a lot of possibilities because, think back to the Indian call center and lots of jokes made around that with the call center where you got the support because of the language difficulties. You describe your problem and the person on the other end didn't understand really what the problem was, and then they started talking to you and maybe even asking some questions so that they could understand and you couldn't understand what they were saying.
Frustration, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
That's a we do it with live chat. So if you're on a you're typing a message on someone's website, we go to them now, so you can speak to you type in any language, and that's pretty much the goal is you don't need to have, say, if you've got customer service representatives working out of India, Philippines, Australia, wherever it may be, you don't need to train someone in a different language. They can just type in their native language. That way you save money on teaching them the ins and outs of your business, not the ins and outs of your business in their second language, because that's where the communication breakdown can happen. Is if you've got someone speaking or typing in their second language, someone the company speaking and typing in their second language, something's going to play up in between.
Yeah. Might end up telling someone you love them when you didn't.
Pretty much,
what you wanted.
Yeah. At least you can do it online and not face to face. That's the benefit of it now.
Yes. All right. So, and now, how's COVID impacted your business and as you've moved forward? Because I know you've done a bit of a pivot.
We pivoted 18 months ago from consumer products to be focused on business enterprises. Obviously, pre-COVID, we did that because we've seen a niche market in the business side. Companies really needed solutions to communicate with their customers. COVID has helped us a little bit, albeit a lot of companies are moving a little bit slower now, but because it's helped us with our business engagement, because those companies don't have the ability to have translators sitting next to them for a brick and mortar store, for example. Everything's been done online or remotely. So the language barrier, whether you're in face-to-face or you're doing it remotely, is still there. So with us, it's helped us get our foot in the door a little bit with some of the bigger companies to be really receptive to use this, whereas before they were receptive, but it took a long time to get through to the right people to really not take it seriously, but to add it as a service to theirs. Whereas now they need it because they're not having as many people come to their store, or their online store is getting an influx of global customers now. They all don't speak the same language.
Well, I think I'm thinking back to my corporate days when I was leading multinational teams across 6, 7, 8 locations, and we were organising the whole enterprise to be a corporate enterprise. And one of the big challenges there was a language thing, because obviously those of us that had English as a first language, it was an American company, so English was the language of choice. But then you had people in places like Japan or China, and who were fabulous at what they did, but English was their second, sometimes third or fourth language. And it always fascinated me because a lot of the folks in America would say, well, why do these people not understand? And I say, well, hang on, how many languages do you speak, and how many languages do they speak? But English is maybe their number 4 language. So what's your number 4 language, and how good are you at your number 4 language?
Yeah, so I think that's exactly it. Exactly it.
Yeah, so I think that there's got to be opportunities there that companies, I would certainly hope that some of them forward-thinking companies take advantage of that.
Yeah, and it's as you said, 3rd, 4th languages, and one word may translate correctly, but it may be misunderstood, and that one word could mean a business deal, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars not going through. So and for us, for me, that obviously English is our primary language, and most places, as at least someone can speak it their second language. We don't really comprehend that. We go, as you just said, why can't they understand this? Because it's their second and third language. It's something that they're trained in the formal sense of it, and that's where our system really comes in. It does contextual translation, and so there's sort of no misunderstandings in conversations.
Yeah, and the live, the real time feature, I think, is a huge value too, because I remember traveling around in China, in parts of China where I'd visit customers with our local representative, and the customers that I was visiting, they didn't speak English. I spoke hardly any Mandarin. I could put together 2 or 3 words, and I'd be reliant on the translator. And then, of course, there was the unknown of how much has he actually translated. Sometimes the translation may not be accurate because their language skills were not as good as a perfect translator would have, or sometimes they'd not translate something because they thought that was not the appropriate thing to say.
Yeah,
that I was being out of line, and vice versa coming back. So and then of course there'd be the delay. So you'd ask a question, and then you'd sit there and kind of twiddle your thumbs a bit, waiting for a reply.
It gets a bit awkward. I remember there was one time when I was in China before we started Lingmo, when I was doing plumbing there, and exactly the same thing. We had a translator, and I said something, and it was like a minute long that I said. And as you said, you're sitting there in the awkward silence. He was talking for about 5 minutes, and I just said, and I've actually, after he goes, and then they're all shaking, everyone's nodding their head, and you go, okay, well, obviously the message got across. And then I turn to the guy, dude, what'd you say? Like, I said 1 minute, you spoke for 5 minutes. He goes, oh, I translated what you said, but then I also said how good you were at what you did and all that type of stuff. I'm going, I didn't say that. But you're sitting there in the awkward silence, you're sitting there nodding. Yes, I agree with what he's saying, but I have no idea what he's saying. I'm hoping it's right.
Yes. Well, one word I learned very quickly in China was Mei Wenti. Don't know if you know that one.
No, I don't know one.
It's the equivalent of no problems.
Oh, okay.
Australian, but I learnt that because we used to have fun with the translators and say, well, what are some of the common terms that you use that are unique to them? And I would always say, well, in Australia we often say no problems. Yeah. And in response to, if somebody asks you, can you do something for me? You'd say no problems, and that means that yes, I'll do it, and it's fine.
Yeah.
And they said, well, that's like Mei Wenti in Mandarin. So I remember being in one place, and this cracked everybody up because I'd asked a question around so they were having a problem, and so I was trying to figure out why they were having this particular problem with our product. And so I asked a question, something along the lines of, what about if you change this, and what about if you do that? Is it still a problem? And then the translator translated that, and the answer was something or other, but within the answer I picked up Mei Wenti. And so I just looked at them all and I said, oh, so no problem. And they all fell over laughing. They kind of like, I don't know whether they were nervous because they thought he understands more than he's letting on or what.
I can only pick up 2 words, but
yeah. Yeah, so it was a funny story. Anyway, the translation real time would be hugely valuable in all those situations.
Yeah, it is. It's just what we're doing is we're just giving a tool out to enable people to communicate. Plain and simple. It's communication's the key.
Yeah. So the Zoom integration you're talking about, that would be essentially the chat as well as the audio?
Yeah, so we're looking to have a launch in early next year for the chat on the live meeting. So when you're typing there, you can type in any language and they receive it. We're just going through our testing now. So we've developed it. We're just going through our beta testing. Then with sort of the middle of next year, we're hoping for a little bit earlier, depending on the testing side. We'll have live transcription and translation of audio. So on the screen, so it's like subtitles. As I said, we're the only ones in the world doing that at the moment. And the results have been really good. We're just making a few fine tuning here and there. But what that does is it enables it to people to communicate anywhere around the world for business and for there's a lot of people using it for pleasure now and schooling and stuff like that. So it just opens up Zoom to the world. Doesn't have to be all English based or one language based. You can communicate no matter.
Yeah, that's magic. Yeah. And how does it go with the different characters? So like the Chinese or Japanese characters or the Thai or Indian?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, we do simultaneous translation, so it doesn't always have to go back from English. So it can go from Chinese to Thai, it can go from Thai to Russian, It doesn't matter. So it always doesn't have to go back to English. So when we release our languages, we make sure we put them out in the field for testing, so everything's accurate. Nuances, it picks up nuances, dialects, contextual understanding. So when it translates from one language to another, you can understand what's being said.
Great. All right. Well, this is absolutely fascinating. I'm really interested to see how that works in real life. So I guess I'll have to wait until next year. But thanks for sharing all that with us. I think now's a good time to move on to the Buzz, which is our innovation round.
Yeah.
And it's designed to help our audience, who are primarily innovators and leaders in their field, with some tips from your experience.
Yeah.
So I've got 5 questions. Hopefully you'll give us some really insightful answers and inspire the listener to go and do something awesome as a result today.
I'll give it my best shot.
Great. So what do you think the number one thing is anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Think different. Think outside the box. You've got to really challenge that status quo, as I mentioned before. And if when you challenge the status quo, you see things different and you get different results. If you're in an industry or you have a product in your mind that's, say, it's already exists, think of how you can do it better, not how you can do it different. That's probably a big key thing. A lot of things, one thing like why people have taken up Zoom more so than Microsoft Teams, for example, it's essentially the same service, but Zoom have made it simple for everyone to use. One click button, you get the meeting come up. So again, it's the same service, but there's just thought of how to make it a little bit different, but also how to improve it for mass scale and for everyone to use it, because not everyone's computer literate.
So focus on the problem in some ways too.
Yeah, and it's also being passionate. I think that's a big thing, is being passionate about the project.
Yeah, well, certainly. I mean, what you talked about earlier about keeping going in the early days when there were lots of challenges and when you got tired, having that passion keeps you going, doesn't it?
Because otherwise you just give up. If you're starting a project or you innovate, especially with innovation, if you're looking to think of innovating a product that's already out there to make it better, if you're thinking about it to sell it and make a mass amount of money and sell a company, when times get tough, and it will get tough, you won't stick in it. But if you're passionate about making a difference with that product, you'll stick through it through thick and thin.
So having the vision really clear and knowing that you can make a difference with this rather than it's just a means for earning money.
Definitely,
yeah. Because the thing with earning money, sort of when it gets tough, you say, well, there's other ways to earn money. Right?
Yes, and especially now with COVID, a lot of people are struggling and, starting a business or, businesses that were making money previously. It could be travel, could be whatever it is. Now during COVID aren't making anything. So this is where the struggle street is. And if you're passionate about it, you'll think of ways to diversify what you've got to keep going. So when the good times come back, you can re-engage that side of the business.
Yeah, great advice. All right, now you've probably touched on this already, but what's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
Again, it's think different, but it's being passionate. It's for me to think about a new idea. Again, being an entrepreneur, I have struggled. I struggle going into a shopping centre and think you can do something different, or you can sell this product a different way. It's been laser focused and focusing on that problem. I think that's on the new ideas side of it, you can have so many ideas, so they can have so many fishing lines out in the boat, but eventually they all get tangled up. So if you're laser focused with one of them, that's where you'll start seeing some good results.
Yeah, I love the fishing line metaphor.
Yeah, like you could have 1,000 rods out. You're not going to catch the same fish. The only thing you're going to catch is each other's line. That's it.
Yeah, great. All right. Now, do you have a favourite resource you use most often?
Well, it's a customer, but it's Zoom at the moment. But it's that to communicate with our team. We're not all in the same office. So it's we've got a team in Pakistan. So the most used resource I have is Zoom and Skype for communicating. So that's the easiest one for me.
Yeah, well, there's probably a whole other podcast to talk about how to work with remote teams and
that's it.
different locations with different languages,
That's it.
which is just something I don't know whether you're using your own product there, and
We are.
also with yeah, and also with the time zones as well, of course. You
Yeah.
touched on that earlier.
It's. I guess that's with the time zones. Touching on that a little bit. I guess with the innovation side, if you're looking at getting developers around the world, it's trying to work out the time zones because you can, especially if you're working on the product full time, you can work on it during the day. But if you have people that are working out of Europe or the States, they can work on it while you're asleep. So you get sort of double the results. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things, back in my corporate career, and this is going back a while now when I first started this, and we were doing physical products as well. But in the research arena, I always thought, wow, with all these different time zones, you could actually have something if it wasn't reliant on a physical product and physical materials moving around. You could actually work 24 hours on a project. So basically, you hand off from one time zone to the next at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I guess that's where with what we're doing as well, communication. If you can do that, if you've got good communication, because if you hand your project off and you haven't communicated properly, when you wake up the next morning, it could be you're gone. You've got to do it again. So
that's right. Yeah. Sorry, we thought you said delete.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Now, what's the best way to keep a project like this on track?
Laser focus. Again, comes down to laser focus. Budgeting. Over budget. Pretty much everything you do is going to go over budget. So if you've got a budget, what I normally do is add 20-30% on top of that as a buffer. And that comes down to when I've done house renovations and all that type of stuff. You renovate houses, it's the same. You always hit your budget and you always go over. So you have your budget and you add 20-30% onto it. But it's laser focus. It's staying laser focused with what you're doing. And I guess it's also having the work-life balance, because if you're working too much on it, you'll get stressed out a lot easier, and a lot of little problems will add up. It's right now, a hobby of what I do is I'm literally building a big caravan for my family. We've got motorbikes and stuff, so I build it from the ground up. Now I've got, it started off with steel on the ground. Now it's a full-on caravan that I'm tying behind the car. And I sit there and people go, well, how'd you build that? And you look at the problem and you go, well, I'll look at the caravan. It can be the same for the problem. You look at it and you go, I don't actually know. It's so big. But then when you break it down, all I did one thing at a time really well, and then replicated it, and kept moving on. And I guess that's the laser focus is, no matter how big the problem looks, if you break it down in little sections and you do those little sections, then you'll achieve something. And then also when you're achieving something, you feel good about it, and then you don't have to be doing it all the time. You spend time with your family and so on.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the breaking things down in little bits and then being really focused on that. And it reminds me, I told this story a few times because a lot of people have kind of said this, break it down in little bits and pieces. And I said when my kids were young, they were very gifted pianists, and they would learn, at 8 years old, they would learn this piano concerto that went for 45 minutes in one go, and they would learn that and they would recite it, but not only just play the notes, but also the entire expression and the coordination with the other instruments in the orchestra and all this. And I would always go, wow, how can you possibly remember all that? And I remember having this one conversation with the piano teacher, and I said, what is it that you do? How do you get the kids to remember this massive thing and all the other bits and pieces that go with it? And she said, it's like eating pizza. It's one little bit at a time.
Yeah. It's the way it is, because I guess being an entrepreneur and especially when you're innovating, you look at the project and you go, bloody hell, that's a big project.
Yeah.
How am I going to get there? But then you just break it down to one little section, as you said, one little piece, one little bite-sized pizza, and you eat that the best you can, then go for the next one.
Great. All right. Now, what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess it comes down to the think different side of it. For me, I guess one of the things with what we've done is differentiating is it's coming back to the story. We don't like coming back to it and where the origins were, but that's how we differentiate ourselves, and we think different. We think outside the box. We don't think like developers. We think about the end product and how we can stay ahead of the curve. I guess it comes down to the individual person, of each project, or what they're innovating is. That's that's a hard question. I think the best way is it's learn more about yourself to learn how you can differentiate in different areas, and then try and replicate that into what you're doing now. I guess would be the easiest way, because each project's different.
Well, you talked earlier about self-awareness and then taking care of yourself as well. And I think there's a theme there that's coming through here, which is a little bit about own your own story. And if you consider that, there's probably not many plumbers who've told policemen in China, I love you, and who've then gone on to become tech entrepreneurs. So that's differentiated you. There's a story there behind that. And it's a fascinating story. People are interested in that, but there's also a product that's come out of that can serve a lot of people.
Yeah, and I guess it comes down to what we were just talking about before. Actually, is breaking it down into little bite-sized pieces. When I did the market research of our competitors, and I worked out the speech recognition side was where they were lacking. That's what we really focused on, to differentiate ourselves in that area, to make the whole process better, like the whole translation process. So I guess in differentiating is trying to pick one bite-sized little thing and doing that better than the competition to differentiate yourself. It could be, you're building a caravan and the way you differentiate yourself is you completely change the color design and do something that's completely wacky, but everyone likes it. Or, you look at what other people are doing and you try and choose, maybe 3 or 4 competitors and see all the little bits of what they're doing wrong, and you combine them to differentiate yourself in that way. Because going through the stages, you do either have to do it different, or you've got to differentiate yourself to get through investment side.
Yes, that's right. You've got to do something to get their attention first, right? Yeah. So they'll listen to you at least enough to then put your pitch forward.
Yeah, because I think I haven't said it, but when I watch a lot of podcasts and listen to a lot of things, and you hear investors say they're sick of hearing we're the Uber of X, or we're like Uber, but we do it in the travel industry and stuff like that. They don't like hearing that type of stuff, because that's not a differentiating point. It's just what they're trying to do is say, well, Uber's worth a couple $100 billion. I'm like Uber, but in this industry. So it's just defining yourself, I think, really.
Great. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Danny. This has been fabulous. Now, where can people find out more about you? Maybe even reach out to thank you for what you shared today, learn about Lingmo, and get in touch.
The best way to learn about Lingmo is jumping on our website, lingmointernational.com. It's got all our products there. It's got everything on it. If you've got any questions, we have a live chat, which you can type in any language, and we communicate in English. Yeah, we use our own product. For me personally, the best way to contact me is through LinkedIn, Danny May, and friend me on there, ask me any questions, and happy to help.
Great. All right, and we'll have links to all of that in the show notes as well. Now, do you have any parting advice today for our listener?
I guess, when it comes to innovation and entrepreneurship, it's be comfortable being uncomfortable. That's probably the best advice, because if you're feeling uncomfortable, you're learning. You take it to the next step. If you're in your comfort zone, you're in your comfort zone. You will learn to a certain degree, but you won't challenge the status quo. So you've got to hear a lot of the word no's. You might feel uncomfortable speaking to people about investment, but you've got to get used to it.
Yeah, I love that. It's, a few people have said that, and I like the kind of the real succinct way that's put, be comfortable being uncomfortable, because there's a kind of a paradox there. And it's funny that I know with my business coach, she always asks some questions, and the moment you get to the point of, I don't really know. And beauty, because now we're in the learning zone. So
that's it.
Let's push
you always
forward,
learn. Everyone always learns. If you're learning, you're moving forward.
Great. All right. And finally, who else should I get on this podcast, and why?
I've done a couple of good podcasts. There's a gentleman. He's called Sadiq. He's out of London, and he's very. I follow him on LinkedIn, Twitter. I've been on his podcast. He actually has his own podcast, but he's a bit like me. One example is he one of his life goals was to get on TEDx, and he just asked questions and contacted the right people and continued doing it. And next thing you know, he was presenting on TEDx, and he's really good at sayings and motivating people. So I think he's a really good person to speak to and have on.
Great. Well, we'll get the details from you and the introduction and have Sadiq on the show. Look forward to that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no problems.
All right. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Danny, and all your insights and sharing the journey of Lingmo with us. I've really learned a lot. It's been inspiring, and I sort of really look forward to seeing it in action. So I'll keep an eye out in my Zoom account when they offer that. And all the best for the future, and let's stay in touch.
No worries. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that insightful and really informative conversation with Danny and took something away from his episode. Danny's passion and drive to solve a problem which he experienced and for which there was no adequate solution at the time, and how he used that drive to shift to a new industry, learn new things and connect with influential people is quite an inspirational story. I'd love to know what you took away from Danny's episode. Leave a comment below the blog post, which you can find at innovabiz.co/Danny May. That is DANNYMAY. All lowercase, all one word, innovabiz.co/Danny May. You'll also find contact information for getting in touch with Danny there, as well as links to the Lingmo website, to his social media pages, and the other resources we spoke about in the conversation. If you like this episode, please share it with 2 other people that it might help. We really owe it to those people that this could help to get this information out into their ears. So if you share this, tag me in that share and I'll reach out to you with a special surprise as my thank you. Danny suggested that we have a conversation with Coach Sadiq Hussain on a future InnovaBuzz podcast episode. So Sadiq, keep an eye on your inbox for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Danny May. Tune in again to the next episodes of the InnovaBuzz podcast, where we've got even more fantastic guests lined up, including creativity expert David Chislett and co-author of the book New to Big, David Kidder of Bionic. Thanks for listening to this episode. Make sure you subscribe to the show to be reminded of new episodes. It's free to subscribe. Leave a review if you like. Even if you don't like me, I'm okay with that. I'm asking you to leave a review because it helps other people find this show. Go to innovabiz.co to join our marketing transformation community and access a free gift my team and I made for you. It's the Marketing Master Mini Class. We want to give you everything you need to transform your marketing into a human-centered, relationship-focused growth engine. Until next time, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBiz. Remember, be awesome and keep innovating.